September 11 was an awesome morning, clear sky, sun was out, went to work like every other day. Had to go over into the West Wing for a meeting with Judge Gonzalez. And we were in the meeting, and at one point, the assistant came in and said, "Oh my God, you need to turn on the TV. You need to see this. A plane just flew into the towers." And so we turned on the TV, we looked at it, and everybody's like, "How in the world is this possible? Wow, this is horrible." Okay, good. Let's turn it off and we'll go on and do our meeting. But 10 minutes later, the same assistant comes in and says, "This meeting is over. Judge, you're needed in the Situation Room now." So he got up, he left. I went back into my office in the old executive office building. And no alarms, no nothing. We sat back down at my desk, had talked with my staff. We were working along, and all of a sudden, the office door opened up with a bang, and in comes a Secret Service agent with a damn machine gun in his hand, and he just screamed, "Get the F out now!" And we just kind of got up, no pocketbook, no phones, no money, no nothing. Got up and we went out. And I took all my volunteers and my staffers, and we're coming out onto 17th Street, and 17th Street is filled with masses with people. Everybody else knew about it except we. So, oh, well, we have no money, we have no nothing. Oh, let's go over to the exchange because they know us there, and we can get some coffee and I can pay them tomorrow. We went into the exchange, and just as we started to order, Secret Service comes and said, "Get out, 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 everybody out." And so they evacuated that whole center there, I Street, 18th Street. So my car is parked within the confines of the White House complex. Keys are in the car because we always had to leave the keys in. But I can't get in because Secret Service won't allow anybody inside the property. So until 3:30 in the afternoon, I sat outside in the park on a bench, waiting that somebody would recognize me and would let me in to get my car. And finally, a Secret Service agent came by and said, "Katja, what are you doing here? Get home." And so, "Oh, my car is in there." And so he got, I don't know, he made some phone calls, got a dog to sweep the car and let me drive out. So I drove home from the White House to Kensington without a driver's license, without any money, without a phone call. In the meantime, my poor son is freaking out because he has been calling my cell phone and he's been calling my office phone, and there's no answer. He has no clue what the hell is going on. So that was my little experience with 9/11, and it changed our entire life, really. We had to move out of the old executive office building probably about 4 days later because they could not harden the windows, and we were facing dead on onto from F Street onto and F and G onto the building. So we had to move out and change the world.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices. secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America.
Well, I have so many memories, as everyone does, of September 11th, 2001, a day that changed our lives, changed our country, and it's actually hard to remember how it was before then. I remember I had a meeting with Washington Gas, a breakfast meeting early that day, and I get a call from my chief of staff that a plane flew into one of the Twin Towers in New York City. Get to my office in the Russell building, there's all sorts of military folks, security folks all over the place. And I said, hey, boys, what in the heck's going on here? And they said, oh, we got to get the First Lady out. She was there testifying that morning on education. Then when that second plane hit the towers, everyone knew this was not an accident. We were under attack. And then soon thereafter, there was the American Airlines Flight 77 that hit the Pentagon. And they told everyone, evacuate, get out of your offices. The plane that went down in Western Pennsylvania, thanks to those patriotic passengers, that plane undoubtedly was coming towards the US Capitol. And I told our staff, everyone, let's meet at my house. We live around Mount Vernon. There's people rushing, running all over the place. You couldn't get over the 14th Street Bridge to Virginia because the Pentagon, because of that, they shut down the 14th Street Bridge, and then so went over the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, and we all regrouped there. I filled up my vehicle with gasoline. You didn't know what's going to happen next. We had just moved there the weekend before Friday, and I had my guns and ammunition, and I was happy to know where that was because all the rest of the boxes, generally speaking, were not unpacked. Ultimately, we had the whole staff at my house. Then we got called that we could get a briefing late that afternoon back in DC, where I went. We got a briefing. Then we had the leaders, the Speaker of the House, Hassert, and the Democrat leader, Majority Leader Tom Daschle of the Senate spoke. And there was a good number of us on the Capitol steps that evening as the sun was going down. And after they gave their remarks of unity and resolve that Americans were all united, regardless of party, and we're going to bring justice to those who perpetrated this, we spontaneously broke into singing God Bless America. And that was a very memorable moment. And it's one that brought our country together. It showed a resolve, and that resolve that we had then of unity needs to be there now. These are tough times. It's an embarrassment what's happened in Afghanistan with the way we've left, but we need to make sure that not only do we remember where we were when the world stopped turning on that fateful day, like the Alan Jackson song, but we also need to have the spirit of Toby Keith's song, Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, that if someone messes with the United States, any of these terrorists will put a boot up your ass. That's the American way. And that's what we need to do, is make sure America is competitive, is independent, is sovereign, and we're protecting our allies, and we're especially protecting the values that make America great, of freedom of religion, freedom of expression, private ownership of property, and the rule of law, where our God-given natural rights are protected. That's the American way that must endure.
So my story on 9/11 is different because during the time I was a member of Congress from Maryland 2nd Congressional District, I had been added to the whip organization. We were in the majority in the House of Representatives at the time. I had, I believe, gone home the night before, most likely gone home. Then the next morning, traveled to Capitol Hill to my office in the Cannon office building, and then joined the other deputy whips, assistant whips at the White House for a fall agenda meeting with the president's staff. We were to go over the president's agenda, our agenda. So the whip organization was there. I remember very specifically 10, 15 minutes into our meeting, some presidential aide came in and said, and told us that the first plane hit the first tower. We had sketchy details at the time. There was no panic. It was an accident. And we literally did not know the size of the plane, casualties, the whole 9 yards. About a half hour later, we're still in the meeting. The aide rushed in again. We're under attack. There's been another incident in New York, another plane, another tower, and get back to Capitol Hill now. We literally ran to our cars out of the White House. We got in our cars back to Capitol Hill. At some point that morning, when I got back to my office, I remember seeing smoke from my window in the Cannon building, smoke from the Pentagon. Shortly thereafter, I was meeting with my chief of staff when the Capitol Police came to my office and said, "You need to get out of here. Members are ordered to leave Capitol Hill now. Just leave. Get out of town now." The leadership, I believe my recollection is correct here, had helicoptered out to an unknown location. But if you were not in leadership, if you were simply a member, majority, minority, didn't matter. You were told to leave. We obviously closed our office, told everybody to go. I remember the traffic jam was monumental leaving town. I remember my car broke down halfway back to Mays Chapel. I had my scheduler, Terry Cox, with me when it broke down. It was couldn't forget it. I got back to my house in Mays Chapel, probably an hour or two later. Kendall greeted me at the door. We sat in front of my house. Everyone was in tears. The entire neighborhood was out, as they were in other neighborhoods around the country. Everybody was crying. Everyone understood a new era had begun. And my wife turned to me and said, "This is a time when we really have to exert," I never forget this, ever. We have to really exert leadership, but to show leadership, we have to, you particularly, husband, have to show leadership. And it was certainly a turning point in all of our lives, certainly a turning point in me, in my life. I can tell you for a fact that in the aftermath of that day, given the importance of leadership, given the importance of strong leadership, the need for it, it was one of the elements that led to my decision to leave the House and run for governor. So that was my experience. It was a horrific day. It was a day we'll never forget. Folks around during Pearl Harbor remember that day. 9/11 is the same way for just about every American you care to name. Everybody remembers what they were doing. Everybody remembers the weather, the clear day. Everybody remembers being glued to their TV. Everybody remembers when the towers came down. Everybody remembers Mayor Giuliani. Everybody remembers the president appearing the next day, walking on top of the rubble and telling the world that this was a new era and the United States was going to lead. So that is my recollection of 9/11. Obviously horrific, a turning point in our history in many respects. And certainly a day that I'll never forget as long as I live.
I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.